Welcome to our presentation. Our topic, we are going to be addressing the price of iPhones on a global scale and calculating the exchange rates between various countries on that. I'm Mason Ingle. The rest of our group is Kyle Sullivan, Matt Kennedy, Andrew Huber, and Jacob Tumlin.
So this first slide is to kind of break down what the iPhone index actually is. We're going to be looking at the exchange rates of the iPhone 12 Pro Max 512 gigabit version across different markets, and with that, looking at the exchange rate differences and the price of what it really costs using the purchasing power parity. What that does is it puts every currency into one home currency, seeing what the relative cost of the item is in different markets. That index is laid out below. How we're going to calculate it, we're going to look at the real exchange rate of different prices of globally sold iPhone 12 Pro Maxes. We're going to adjust those using the real exchange rate back to the index. We're indexing everything to the US dollar in this index, and then we're going to measure the validity of the purchasing power parity given the index. So what is the iPhone? Apple was founded in 1976 by Steve Wozniak and Steve Jobs. They were originally a computer in the industry of computers. Their first project was a home computer and really kind of changed the way people thought about portable technology. The original iPhone was revolutionary. It wasn't the first smartphone, but it was one of the most widely accepted smartphones when it came out. It was released in 2007, so just about 13 years ago. Since the original iPhone's release, Apple has released 20 different models of cell phone, and they have sold more than 2.2 billion iPhones worldwide over that time. And the chart to our left shows their annual revenue in dollars over that time.
Yeah, and to provide a little bit more background on the latest iPhone, the iPhone 12 Pro Max, it's Apple's latest product, and it's probably the biggest leap we've seen in terms of the phone's capabilities. The addition of 5G is a major jump for cell phones and is going to have, no doubt, a massive impact on the way the phone is priced. It also has the largest screen coverage of any iPhone yet, and the standard crafted out of surgical grade stainless steel. It's the same quality of product you would expect, but the addition of 5G is a major leap forward for the latest iPhone.
So just like a brief overview of like the history of the iPhone, I'm sure most of y'all know already, but it came out in 2007 and Singular had the exclusive rights for cellular service. And this was like not the first smartphone, but it really like pioneered the way for smartphones in the phone industry. The following year, the 3G one came out. It was just a faster, more powerful version of the original phone, same like design. And then in 2009, the 3GS came out. It was the same kind of deal, just an improved camera as well. And the fourth generation was the first like new model design, and it added a front-facing camera. Then the fifth generations came out in 2011. Those were the 4S's, and those had Siri. Those were the first introduction of that. But at this point, Androids had developed enough to the point where they were losing their market share in the smartphone industry. In 2012, the iPhone 5 came out. It had improved processing power, was still faster, but it was a general disappointment, and they lost a even larger share of their market in the smartphone industry. And then the seventh generation, 2013, had the 5S and the 5C. That was the introduction of the fingerprints. And Androids continued to climb, although iPhones are still incredibly popular, and they continue to be so. I didn't want to put like all the iPhones in here because I'm sure y'all like have them and whatnot, like y'all know.
All right, so when we look at the iPhone 12 Pro Max prices worldwide, you can see that this is a very expensive Apple product, and because we chose the new iPhone and the 512 gigabyte version, this is the most expensive iPhone on the market right now. So there were several trends that we noticed when looking at the prices in terms of the local currencies translated to the US dollars. The iPhone is the most expensive in India, and this was seen as an outlier because when compared to other Asian countries, it was much more expensive, which I will talk about on the next slide. And then India was followed by several Northern European countries that all sell the iPhone at right around $2,000. And they're followed by all the Central European countries that adopted the euro as their currency, and they're selling their iPhone at a similar price, a little over $1,900. So on this slide, you'll see the next tier of pricing where prices have dropped significantly. The only European countries in this tier are countries that have not adopted the euro. This tier is mostly made up of Asian countries and countries in the Americas. This is why India was seen as an outlier, because the iPhone costs about $350 more in India than any other Asian country. And so after doing a little bit of research, I found that Apple does not have any local manufacturing units in India. And so most are imported, and then they're sold in this area by third-party vendors, which also increases the price. And then on the opposite end of the spectrum are countries like Hong Kong, Canada, Japan, and the US, which is why, as expected, they all sell at very low price. So here you can see these numbers represented as graphs. India and Northern Europe are the darkest shades of blue. So they're the most expensive, and like the US is the lightest, so it's the cheapest. It's also important to note that Southern America or South America and Africa are not a light color because they're cheap, but they're just not taken into account because in those areas, the iPhone is actually really expensive. For example, in Brazil, the price of the iPhone was 75% higher than the US price. So it was even more expensive than India by a few $100s.
So as we kind of mentioned before, the iPhone exchange rate index is basically just used to measure the validity of a country's PPP or purchasing power parity given that index. So basically it's just measuring the performance of a country against the so-called basket of like other currencies. And this basket for us is the countries that we chosen beforehand. And in order to create this table, I went through Excel and I included the country name, the price of the phone in that foreign country's currency, the exchange rate of the foreign country to US currency, the price of the iPhone in the US, which is around $1,400, as you can see. And first I calculated the real exchange rate using the formula of the exchange rate multiplied by the foreign price over the US price. This is important because this measures the value of the currencies, taking into account the changes in price level based on the exchange rate. And then from there, to measure the iPhone index, I'll use the formula we previously mentioned in order to create that final column on the right. It's also important to mention that the US has a value of 0 for its index due to it being treated as the home nation for all the calculations.
Yeah, so to wrap up our presentation a little bit, looking at some of the data we analyzed here, looking at the European countries, the price is relatively consistent at about between $1,800 and $2,000 in terms of US dollars. In terms of logistics of purchasing across borders and doing all of that, given the consistency of pricing there and the strength of the euro against the dollar, probably isn't a viable option for a lot of the European countries. One outlier that we feel does stand out is India, the price approaching towards 2,200 US dollars with an $800 gap in price in terms of exchange rates between the US and India. That would probably be the prime choice in terms of ordering across borders and utilizing exchange rate to your advantage in terms of purchasing it. Other than that, I hope you guys enjoyed the presentation and appreciate your time.